If you're listening to this right now, maybe you're one of those people who look completely fine on the outside, but inside, you're breaking a little more every single day. Maybe you're the person who answers everyone with a smile, but avoids looking yourself in the eye. Because sometimes life becomes so heavy that even breathing feels like a responsibility. People are around you, yet you don't feel like talking. Your phone is full of contacts, but you don't have the courage to call anyone, because every time you do, you hear the same words, "Everything will be okay." And deep inside, you keep wondering when, how, and why. A person feels the most lonely when they're trying to look strong in front of everyone. They smile so no one asks questions. They say, "I'm fine," so no one finds out the truth. And then at night, when everyone falls asleep, when all the noise fades away, they stare at the ceiling and silently ask, "God, are you really watching me?" Because so many times a person isn't wrong, yet their life still feels wrong. They work hard, but circumstances don't support them. They give their heart sincerely, yet they're the first ones left alone. And then the questions are no longer about the situation. They turn inward. Slowly, even prayers begin to feel tired. A person doesn't stop talking to God. They just start expecting less. They think, maybe my prayer wasn't strong enough. Maybe my faith wasn't complete. Maybe I'm not worthy. And this is where a person truly starts breaking from the inside. Because the moment you begin to doubt yourself, everything starts to fall apart.
So no words from this world are able to make them strong again. But the truth is, the moment a person feels that God is the farthest away, that is the very moment He is the closest. God never makes noise. He never comes down to prove that He is God. He simply watches, watching to see whether a person gives up in front of circumstances or holds on to faith even without answers. Because trust is easy when everything is going well, but real trust is born when nothing makes sense, and still, from deep inside, a person can say, "I don't know what will happen next, but I believe." In every person's life, there comes a phase where no path looks clear, where every door feels closed, where the more you move forward, the lonelier you become. And that phase teaches you what the entire world never could. God does not break a person. He empties them so something new can be placed inside. But the process of becoming empty is painful. Relationships fall apart, hopes shatter, and a person slowly forgets who they are. If today you feel like everything is stopped, if you are exhausted and can't even explain it to anyone, if you feel completely alone, then understand this. This loneliness is not the end. This is the place where a person and God meet without words, where the person stops speaking and God begins to work. You may not understand it right now, but one day you will look back and say to yourself, if that phase had never happened, I would not be the person I am today. And slowly you begin to realize that none of this was happening against you. It was happening to change something within you. Because God never gives pain to make someone weak. He gives pain so a person can discover the strength hidden inside them, the strength that never comes out during comfortable days. When a person falls again and again, that's when they realize they are also getting back up every time, each time a little more balanced, a little wiser, a little calmer. God does not take everything at once. He removes things slowly so a person doesn't break, but understands, so they can see that the things they trusted the most had quietly become their greatest weaknesses. Many times, a person places hope in people, in situations, but forgets to place hope in themselves. And God creates loneliness to restore that hope. Loneliness is not a punishment. It is the space where a person hears their own voice for the first time, where they realize they were not only someone who needed support, but someone who can become support for others too. In that loneliness, a person sees both their mistakes and their strengths. The only difference is that now they can no longer run away from themselves. God does not give answers in words, He gives answers through circumstances. He brings a person to a turning point where there are only two choices: to completely break or to stand up stronger from within. And the one who reaches that point and still refuses to let go of faith, God is the one he leads forward. Many times a person feels their prayers were not heard, but the truth is those prayers were paused because what they were asking for was not enough for them. God never gives less, He gives fully at the right time. And the pain a person feels from what they believe they have lost,
that very thing later becomes their greatest relief, because if it had not left, the person would never have been able to move forward. And slowly, without announcements and without noise, God begins to bring changes into a person's life. Changes they don't notice at first. They only feel that they are no longer the same. The same words no longer break them. The same situations no longer scare them the way they used to, because somewhere deep inside, a quiet trust has taken root. If I survived that, I will survive what comes next. That trust eventually shapes a person into someone they never even imagined becoming. And little by little, that same trust changes the way they walk through life. They don't panic as quickly anymore. They don't fall apart over every small thing, because deep down, they have accepted that not every answer comes immediately. Some answers reveal themselves with time. Now the person begins to understand that God's silence is not ignorance. It is waiting, a kind of waiting that prepares a person from within. The one who once blamed themselves every time they fell, now that same person, after falling, begins to think, "What am I meant to learn from this?" And that single thought sets them apart from everyone else. God doesn't walk a person straight down the path. He turns them around, lets them fall, makes them stop, so that when they finally arrive, they are able to stand there firmly. So many times, a person fails to understand that the very thing breaking them the most is also what's making them the strongest, because pain doesn't always make noise, but it always leaves an impact. When a person fights quietly every single day without telling anyone, a kind of strength is built inside them, one that no one can see, but at the right time becomes their backbone. God removes certain people from a person's life so they can learn that they are capable of standing on their own, because someone who is always searching for support can never fully stand. And when a person learns to stand on themselves, that's when God turns them into support for others. Slowly, the person begins to realize that the things they once feared are now teaching them that there is a path beyond fear. Every time they feel like this is the end, they find themselves taking one more step forward, as if someone is holding them from within. This is how God holds you, not visible, but never letting you fall. And that is why some people remain calm even after enduring so much, because deep inside, they've understood that what is happening to them is not meant to destroy them, but to shape them. When a person reaches this understanding, they stop complaining and start accepting. And acceptance is not defeat. Acceptance is the beginning of a fight that a person is finally ready to win. When a person learns to accept, a strange sense of peace slowly settles within them. The circumstances remain the same, the problems are still there, but now they are no longer shaken from the inside, because they understand that not every battle is fought on the outside. Some battles must be won within. God strengthens a person from the inside first, because victories on the outside are temporary, but victories on the inside change a person forever. Now, a person no longer sees every hardship as an enemy. They begin to see it as a signal, a message showing them where to pause and where to change themselves. Many times, the things that break do not break because they were useless. They break so a person can stop depending on them. God removes supports so a person can learn to become their own support, because the one who learns how to hold themselves cannot be brought down by anyone. Slowly, a person's fear begins to fade. They start thinking less about the future and living more in the present, because they understand that losing today while worrying about tomorrow is the greatest defeat of all. God doesn't teach a person that there will be no pain. He teaches them how to stand even when there is pain. And the one who learns to stand with pain is the one who touches true strength. Now, other people's words don't hurt as much because they've built a wall inside, not one that makes them cold, but one that keeps them steady. They know not everyone will understand their story, and they also realize that not everyone needs an explanation. God teaches a person to stay silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, and that silence eventually becomes their greatest strength.
Slowly, a person begins to find answers to their own questions, and every answer brings them closer to God. Because now they understand that God is not somewhere outside, but present in the very journey they are living every single day. With this understanding, a new perspective is born within them. They no longer look at everything through the fear of losing, but through the lens of learning, because they've realized that what left was not always what they truly needed, and what is truly necessary can never be taken away. God doesn't change the things in a person's life. He changes the person, so those same things can no longer break them. The one who once saw every failure as the end now begins to see it as a turning point, a turn where the path may change, but the journey does not stop. Now the person understands that not every answer needs to come immediately. Some answers arrive only when a person stops asking questions and starts moving forward. God doesn't pull a person ahead. He pushes them from within, so gently that it feels like their own decision, yet so deeply that it changes the direction of their entire life. The person no longer hates their past because they realize that yesterday is what brought them to today. Without that pain, this understanding might never have existed. God doesn't heal wounds instantly. He allows them to heal, because healed wounds remind a person that they survived. And once someone knows they survived even after breaking, fear no longer controls them. Slowly, the voice of complaint inside a person begins to fade, replaced by a quiet acceptance, an acceptance that is not surrender, but readiness. Now they no longer see each day as a last hope, but as a new opportunity, because they trust that whatever comes, they will be able to handle it. God moves a person forward through this very trust, without announcements, without showing himself, only making them feel that they are not alone and never truly were. And when this trust settles inside a person, even the things that aren't visible on the outside begin to change. Their thinking changes, their reactions change. They no longer see every difficulty as an enemy, but as a test, almost as if life is checking how steady they have become. God doesn't give easy paths. He makes a person so strong that even the difficult path starts to feel manageable. The one who once asked, "Why is this happening to me?" now quietly thinks, "What am I meant to become through this?" That shift is what moves a person forward. God doesn't fix everything in a person's life instantly. He teaches them how to wait, because the one who learns patience doesn't make reckless decisions out of restlessness. Waiting doesn't slow a person down, it deepens them. Slowly, a person begins to realize that the things that once disturbed them the most no longer shake them the same way. A sense of stillness has formed within. Now they don't react to every noise or break over every word, because they've understood that not every voice is the truth, and not every truth needs to be spoken. God teaches a person this balance so they don't bend too much and don't become too rigid, but continue walking steadily on their path. Now, a person doesn't hide their pain, but they don't turn it into a display either, because they know their journey is not meant for the crowd. It is for becoming their own self. And in this very journey, without announcing it,
God is leading a person toward a place where one day they will be able to say to themselves, "Yes, I am not the same person I used to be." And as the person changes, life also slowly begins to change its colors. From the outside, everything may look the same, but inside, something has settled. Now a person doesn't wake up every morning with fear, but with a quiet trust that whatever comes today, they will be able to handle it. God doesn't take away a person's pain all at once. He frees them from the habit of suffering under it. Because pain remains heavy only as long as a person is crushed beneath it, and the day they learn to walk alongside it, pain begins to lose its power. Now a person no longer feels ashamed of their weaknesses because they've realized that those very weaknesses are what made them real, and what is real is what lasts. God doesn't separate a person from the crowd. He makes them so deep that the crowd can no longer reach them. Now that person doesn't feel small when they see others succeed, because they know their journey is different and their timing is different too. God never holds anyone back. He simply moves everyone forward on different paths. And with this understanding, a deep sense of peace begins to settle within a person. A kind of peace that isn't broken by noise, a kind of peace that isn't afraid of circumstances. Now they don't fight life, they walk with it. They fall, they steady themselves, and they move forward without obsessing over where the end is. Because the end no longer matters to them, growth does. God uses this transformation to lead a person to a place where they don't say, "My life is perfect," but instead say, "I am strong now." And another truth becomes clear inside them, that trying to control life is what exhausts us the most, because bending everything to our will is never fully in our hands. God doesn't take control away from a person. He teaches them where to let go. When a person learns to let go, an unseen weight lifts from their shoulders. Now they don't cling to every relationship or hold tightly to every outcome, because they understand that what truly belongs to them will stay, and what doesn't will feel empty even if it remains. God doesn't free a person from loss. He frees them from attachment, because attachment is what keeps pulling a person back into the same pain again and again. Now they also begin to understand that not every door needs to open, and not every closed door is a loss. Some doors close so a person doesn't stop in the wrong place. God doesn't always give a person what they want. He gives them what will help them move forward. And when a person accepts this, a lightness enters their life, a kind of lightness where fear is less and trust is greater. Now they no longer punish themselves for the past, because they understand that without all of that, this awareness would never have existed. God doesn't pull a person backward. He makes them wise enough that they stop looking back on their own. With this understanding, a person moves forward, without rushing, without trying to prove anything, simply carrying their truth. And that truth slowly brings them closer to a place where for the first time they feel genuinely at peace with themselves. Along with that peace, a deeper realization is born. Life doesn't mean winning every single day. Sometimes simply surviving is the greatest victory of all. God doesn't teach a person how to have everything. He teaches them how to stand with what they have. Now a person no longer sees every fall as a failure. They see it as part of the journey, because they've learned that stopping is defeat, falling is not. God doesn't stop a person, He steadies them, so that when they rise after falling, they don't lose themselves.
Now, a sense of simplicity settles within them. They don't want too much, but for what they do want, they walk forward with complete honesty. They come to understand that paths don't clear by making noise. The destination comes closer when you walk quietly. God never tests a person beyond their strength. He gives only as much weight as a person can carry. And with that weight, He also gives a lesson so the person doesn't return empty-handed. Now, a person begins to understand the difference between when to fight and when to let go. Because not every battle is meant to be won. Some battles exist to make a person wiser. God teaches this understanding, that not every answer is necessary, not every explanation is required, and not every pain needs to be proven. When a person truly understands this, they become both lighter and stronger. Now they walk their path without worrying about what people will say, because they know that the one who is walking is the one who is learning. God doesn't tempt a person with the destination, He connects them to the journey. And the one who becomes connected to the journey is never empty. And after connecting with the journey, another change becomes clearly visible within a person. They no longer run in the race to prove themselves, because they've understood that the one who is truly moving forward never needs to make noise. God doesn't push a person ahead of the crowd, He shows them their own path, a path that requires courage, not approval. Now, a person begins to feel the difference between what they once wanted from life and what life now wants from them. Before, they only thought about gaining. Now, they think about becoming. God doesn't shrink a person's dreams. He expands the person so much that the dreams naturally change. Now, they no longer insist on having everything immediately, because they've seen that the things that come slowly are the ones that last. God doesn't rush a person. He teaches them how to pause, because the one who learns to pause never takes a wrong turn in panic. A sense of self-control settles within them, one that doesn't let them fall apart even when circumstances get difficult. They know that not every day will be good, but every day will make them better. God doesn't give a perfect life, He gives a perfect perspective so a person can find meaning even in what feels incomplete. Now, a person no longer makes their pain their identity because they've understood that pain was a phase, it was not who they are. And with this understanding, they keep moving forward, without haste, without fear, because they now trust that whatever is happening to them is not meant to break them, but to prepare them. And in the middle of this preparation, a person begins to have small realizations that can't be seen but settle deeply within. Like how they no longer wake up each morning asking, "What will I lose today?" Instead, they think, "What will I learn today?" God doesn't reveal big miracles in a person's life all at once. He makes small, quiet changes so the person doesn't feel afraid but understands.
Now, certain things become clear. Some people were around but were never truly with them. Some paths looked easy but were slowly making them weaker. And some pains felt unnecessary but were actually essential. God doesn't teach by explaining everything. He teaches through experience, so the lessons don't feel like pages from a book, but like truths lived and felt. A person also begins to understand that not every smile means happiness, and not every silence is empty. They've learned so much in their silence that they no longer feel the need to prove anything. God doesn't raise a person to make them look above others. He raises them so they can see farther. Now, a person trusts their own pace. They don't see themselves as behind just because others are running faster, because they know their journey is different, and so is their destination. God doesn't make a person compete or compare. He helps them recognize who they are, so they stop searching for themselves in others. And when a person stops looking for themselves outside, they begin to truly become who they are, without fear, without complaint, carried by a trust that has slowly become their backbone. With that trust, a person no longer carries life like a burden, but like a responsibility, one where fear is less and understanding is greater. Now they don't live each day to prove something, they live it to honor it. God doesn't teach a person how to control everything. He teaches them how to accept what cannot be controlled. And with that acceptance, a depth forms within them. They're no longer easily affected by surface-level things because they've seen so much on the inside. Now, other people changing doesn't surprise them because they've watched themselves change. God doesn't pull a person away from relationships. He shows them the truth of relationships so they stay where there is belonging, not obligation. And now they understand this too. Not every connection is meant to last forever, but every connection comes to teach something. God never leaves a person empty-handed. For everything that leaves, he gives something in return. A little more understanding, a little more peace, and a little more strength. Now a person doesn't run from their past, they respect it, because they know that past was their greatest training. God doesn't tell a person to move forward by forgetting, he tells them to understand. And once a person truly understands, forgetting is no longer necessary. With this understanding, they keep moving ahead without rushing, without fear, because now their steps no longer stumble. They know where they are going. A deep sense of stability becomes clearly visible within them, a stability that doesn't shake even when circumstances change. Because now they've accepted that the purpose of life is not to find answers to every question, but not to lose yourself in any situation. God brings a person to this place slowly so they can recognize themselves without panic, without breaking. Now loneliness no longer frightens them because it was in that loneliness that they learned how to hold themselves. They've understood that not every emptiness is a loss. Some emptiness creates space so the right things can truly stay. God doesn't give a person victory every time, but he always gives a lesson, and that lesson eventually becomes their greatest asset. Now other people's opinions don't feel so heavy because they've found their own voice. They speak less, but when they do, their words carry weight. God leads a person away from appearances and closer to truth, because someone who becomes real no longer needs to prove anything. Now they don't hide their pain, but they don't make it their identity either, because they've understood that pain was a phase, not the destination. God doesn't rush a person to the destination. He makes them wise enough that waiting for it no longer feels like a burden. Now a person no longer wakes up each morning fearing what might go wrong. They wake up with trust that whatever comes, they will be able to handle it. And that trust begins to show in the way they walk, the way they speak, and even in their silence, like a quiet strength settled deep inside, moving them forward without making any noise. With this quiet strength, a person now looks at life without the lens of complaint, because they've realized that what happened was never meant to weaken them, it came to prepare them. God shows a person who they have already become in their solitude, so they can learn to trust themselves. Now when they look back, they don't see only pain, they also see the courage they showed when no one was there. God reminds a person that they made it through days they once believed they never would, and now they no longer feel the need to prove to anyone how much they endured, because they know it themselves. God doesn't give a person honor through noise, he fills them with self-respect, so they never have to make themselves small just to look big in someone else's eyes. Now gratitude begins to grow within them. Gratitude even for the pain, for the waiting, and for those empty nights when they had to hold themselves together. God makes the meaning of everything clear, maybe late, but always deep.
Now a person understands that not every blessing arrives as a smile. Some blessings come in the form of strength. And when a person accepts this truth, peace and balance begin to settle into their life on their own, like everything is slowly falling into place, without rush, without fear, carried by the trust that whatever comes next will be faced by a more grounded, more prepared version of themselves. And when a person finally reaches this place, they begin to realize that God never left them alone at all. He was simply guiding them back to themselves. The paths that once felt like the end were actually shaping them. Now a person no longer fears their pain, because they know that pain is what made them who they are today. God doesn't give a person exactly what they ask for. He shapes them into someone worthy of receiving it. Now, when a person looks back, they don't feel complaint, they feel gratitude. Gratitude even for the tears that fell silently, for the nights when they had to hold themselves together, and for the questions that never received answers but forced them to think deeper. God doesn't remove darkness from a person's life completely. He makes them capable of seeing through it, until the darkness no longer feels frightening. Now a person understands the difference between losing and stopping. They may have lost many times, but they never truly stopped, and that is what brought them to where they are today. God never lifts a person up suddenly. He strengthens them so deeply from within that rising becomes a result, not a goal. Now a person doesn't need to prove to anyone how much they've changed, because that change is visible, in their eyes, in their words, and in their silence. God has taught them that trust doesn't mean always getting answers. Trust means continuing forward even without them. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe this is part of that same trust, a moment meant to remind you that you were never alone, you are not alone, and you never will be. God was watching, God was listening, and now God has brought you to a place where you don't feel weak, but prepared. If this story reached your heart, if you found yourself somewhere within it, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so more honest and meaningful words like these can keep reaching you. Because sometimes the right words at the right time can change the way you see your entire life.